What's going on, guys? It is Victoria and Ian here from Radioactive, and today we are joined by the amazing Evan Potter. How are you doing today, Evan?
Hi guys, I am wonderful. Thank you for asking me back yet again.
Yes, like I said, we are very excited for this episode today, and Ian and I actually have a really interesting start to this episode today.
All right, bring it
So
on. Let's
we
go.
were
I love it.
we were talking about, oh, what are we gonna ask Evan? And we know that you were on Shiprocked, and somehow
Indeed.
we'll get to that. But somehow this led us into talking about the Bermuda Triangle.
Okay, bring it on.
I don't even know where to start with this, Ian.
Well, there's like a theme, dude. There's a theme of the ocean, shipwrecked, cruises, marine biology trivia. By the way, that's what's coming at the end of this. Is marine biology trivia.
Okay,
So,
cool.
dude, I'm so stoked. Like, this has always been so fascinating to me. The ocean, dude.
It's vast. It's
Yeah.
vast and it's freaky and yeah, I didn't even realize up until a couple of days of being on the ship, somebody was like, I think that we're right in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle right now. And sure enough, for much of our adventures out at sea, we were definitely inside the Bermuda Triangle.
Wow. Okay, well, this fits
Yeah,
right in then.
this is perfect.
That is amazing. So, like, I guess you were in the Bermuda Triangle. What does
As
it
it as it turns out.
did it feel any different? Were you ever like, this feels like really weird?
Well, have either of you guys ever been on a cruise ship before?
No, and I don't intend
Yeah.
to.
Okay. This is my fourth cruise experience, all dealing with these musical cruises. I've never been on one for, just leisure or whatnot. But so I asked that because whether or not you are on a cruise that goes into the Bermuda Triangle or not, it's a little bit of an odd experience, anyways, because you're on this basically giant sideways hotel that's floating in the middle of the ocean for, a week at a time. Um, so, anyways, it's kind of a little bit of a something you need to wrap your head around, and you know, you keep your phone on the time zone that you set sail from. So even though you're crossing into other time zones, you stay on one and like everyone is a little bit thrown off because they feel like it's a certain time, but it's just a little bit of an odd environment to be in the first place. But absolutely while we were on the ship and a few days in and we were kind of like, man, does it just sort of feel funny here or people are acting a little bit funnier this or that, and once it got brought up that we were in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, or I guess not in the middle, we were at sort of the southern part of it, I think a few people were sort of like, oh, all right, well, any strangeness other than what normally goes on we can just chalk up to being in this strange place.
Yeah,
Yes.
I definitely don't want to be anywhere near the Bermuda Triangle. But I guess you survived. So,
We survived, yeah, we were fine. I came out with a little bit of sickness, but I mean, again, these cruise ships are basically like petri dishes of people from all over the place that bring all kinds of stuff. So by the time that we left, I had lost my voice and just had, a little bit of like cold stuff going on. But I think that had a lot more to do with there being 4,000 strangers crammed all in the same area for a week. But who knows? Maybe it was some triangle stuff that got me, but I definitely wasn't the only one.
yeah.
I was the only one from my circle of people that I was working with, but there's a on Facebook, there's a shipwrecked forum page that many of the longtime goers and the people who put it on are a part of. And over the last week, I've seen countless people chime in and say, "Hey, I'm running a temperature. Hey, I have, I got a cold. I got this or that. Anybody else feel this?" And everyone is like, "Yep, over here too." But I'm good now. I kicked it quick. The triangle wasn't going to bring me down.
Do you believe that Amelia Earhart is actually deceased, or do you think she's still alive somewhere else?
Well, as with all things like this, I would love to believe the latter idea. I love the thought that, you know, she made it through and she's hanging out, hopefully laying real low on a beach somewhere, enjoying life, flying under the radar, pun intended. So I sure hope so. I didn't see her on my journeys, but in all fairness, I wasn't looking too hard for her. So, you know, there is what a perfect scenario to stay lost in the mix than being on a beach where cruise ships come through and there's new people every day. I did a handful of years ago when I was still living in Nebraska. This is before I moved to LA and ultimately Nashville. There's an amusement park nearby in Kansas City called Worlds of Fun that I went to with a group of friends around Halloween. And I've always been a fan of the idea that Tupac is still alive and well somewhere. And we were in line for one of these rides on Halloween where they deck out the whole, amusement park for Halloween and whatnot. And there was a guy who was standing in line who looked exactly like Tupac, had the tank and the chain and the bandana forward. And I had this clicking moment. What better place for somebody like Tupac to hide if he's trying to fake, being dead than right in front of everybody's faces? It's the perfect crime. The last place anyone would think Tupac would be in line at this roller coaster all these years for in Kansas City. So I like I like the idea.
Well, there's that
Um,
theory too that Elvis is still alive.
Oh yeah. There's
So,
a theory about Avril Lavigne, you know?
mhm. Yep. Oh, what's the
That's
Melissa? It ain't
yeah,
Avril,
that
it's
she's
Melissa.
that there's a stand-in. There's been a stand-in for years.
Yep.
what?
Oh, you didn't know about
Yeah.
this, Ian? It's like a whole theory thing. It's crazy.
Avril Lavigne. What
Yep.
about her?
Avril is not Avril. It is Melissa.
That at some point Avril was taken out of the equation. I don't know exactly what the details were, but for years now, the theory is that there has been a stand-in person, who kind of looks like her and has been pretending to be Avril this whole time, but there's some big conspiracy that it's not actually her.
So
This is
crazy.
spooky.
Yeah,
Who
it is.
knows?
I love it.
And that's the
I
thing. You
love
don't actually,
this.
it sounds crazy, but a part of me wants to believe it.
Of course. Yeah,
Is
I
it
love.
out of the realm of possibilities? Absolutely not. No.
No, for sure not. The only way to solve this, we need to have Avril Lavigne on the show.
Hey, bring her on. I think
And
she could really shed some light on all of this.
I really think so. And if she dodges all of our questions,
Ah, I
I
think
think
she's talked about this in some interviews before, but of course she says, no, it's so crazy. Like that couldn't be anybody else. But if you were a stand-in, of course you would say that.
well, exactly. What else are you gonna say? So just
Yeah,
makes me
right.
believe it more. But yeah, so back to Shiprocked.
Siprocked.
You were on Shiprocked doing guitar teching, right? You weren't playing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep,
cool.
that's correct. I was teching with Atreyu, who was the first band that I started teching with almost 3 years ago. And because recently, or more recently, I've been working with the Struts and with Hailstorm. This was actually the first batch of shows that I've done back with Atreyu in um, a year and a half or 2 years or something like that. So it was a very nice reunion with all of them. It was really, I mean, that they really accepted me and welcomed me in as family in that first batch of time that I started working with them, and that has maintained over these last few years. So anytime that I have a chance to go and work with them again, especially on something like Shiprocked, which is a lot of fun and, truth be told, quite a bit more of just vacationing than anything, because it's 7 days long, and each band, as far as I know, is only obligated to two 60-minute performances throughout the course of the week. So the first day that we all got on the boat, Atreyu did a set that evening, and then that was on Sunday or Monday, and they didn't do another one until Thursday evening. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was just bopping around watching bands on a ship. So there's
Yeah.
worse gigs you could do, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and like I don't know much about Shiprock. Like how like is there just
Hmm.
one stage or is there a couple or like how's that work?
There's multiple stages. So there's the main pool deck stage, which is sort of I don't know, the biggest stage and the most prominent one, which is on the top deck of the cruise. So when you're up there, I mean, it's open air and you look out either direction and it's just water as far as you can see. And but it's a full production, full everything main stage there. But throughout the rest of the ship, like there's a theater in the middle of the ship, which is kind of a typical theater sized room. And then there's a few smaller ones that are kind of sprinkled throughout that are different sizes. And it's cool. It's a really awesome experience because at any given time, let's say there's 15 to 20 bands on the ship throughout the week, and they all have these two performances. So you get a schedule each day that says who's playing at what time, at what stage. So you can kind of coordinate. Oh, okay, I'm going to go watch Hollywood Undead on the main deck stage at this time, and then right from there we're going to go watch the Ghost Inside in the theater, and then we'll go do this and that. So pretty much every day they're out there, it's constant bands performing.
This is going to be a really stupid question, but they have merch booths on the ship, right?
There is a merch section, a massive one, where all of the different bands' merch is posted up for the whole week. So it's not like just when one of the bands are performing, is your time to go and do that. It's an entire floor of an area that's set up for merch all week. So anytime you have free time, people would go down there and do that. It's also where they would host meet and greets because on Shiprock, like along with the performances, there's meet and greets that happen. There's games that happen, which some of the artists will host. There's karaoke nights. There's dodgeball. There's belly flop contests. So really, really, what's enticing to people who go to these things is that I mean, it's basically a week long meet and greet to some extent with all these bands because there is a couple areas, like a dining area that is just for artists. Um, but really 90% of what goes on the ship is everybody immersed with everybody. So, you could go get a drink at one of the bars or go get food somewhere and be sitting next to whoever, it's a very inclusive, community environment. And Shiprock does a really good job too of not only bringing on good bands that people are interested in, but once, especially people who have been on Shiprock more than once, it's really important to get a reputation if you want to come back that, being around and being kind of active and being visible for people to be able to, just say hi or take a picture or something like that. Um, it's a really big deal. So it becomes a very fun, inclusive environment for both the bands and the crews and people who are just coming to enjoy the experience.
I kind of have a curveball question, but it
Curve
has
it
to do
up.
with rocked. But um, do you drink at all, Evan?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a
Um,
I'm not a super massive drinker, but I'll get down as to whatever level everyone else is getting down to.
with that said, uh,
Hmm.
so it's I don't know if this is true or not, but I hear that when you drink at a higher altitude, it hits
Hmm.
you a lot faster. Can the same be said when you're on a cruise ship for an extended period of time, perhaps out to sea? When you drink, does it hit you harder or is it still kind of the same as when you're on land?
I think without knowing any of the science or whatnot behind it, my guess would be it does have a tendency to hit people harder in that experience, but not because of environmental issues. I think it hits people hard because, especially for the people who, are diehard fans and go often, it might be their one vacation that they do every year and that they, get excited for all year long. And so you have all these people who have been building up all this excitement to go and be back with their friends and see all these great bands and are ready to party. So everyone's coming into the boat a little bit, riled up to get the party going in the first place. You mix that excitement with the seasickness that people can get on the boat, if they need, just from the nature of being out at sea on a cruise ship. I mean, people who don't drink have that happen. So you couple those things together, and then lots of times, you're in the sun all day, especially on days when you get off at one of the ports. Like when we were on this shipwreck, we went to St. Thomas Island and got off for the afternoon and hung out at the beach there. So you're in the sun all day, you're traveling around, um, and you're watching bands and doing stuff. So sometimes it's easy to skip lunch, or it's easy to, get caught up in having drinks and forget to take down some water at some point. So I do think that the shipwreck experience could lead to people getting more intoxicated than they would on average, but I don't think it has to do with altitude. I think it has to do with excitement and accessibility of libations everywhere.
I can dig it. I can dig it.
Yeah. It's definitely it's more of a marathon than a sprint, and it has taken me now 4 attempts to get my pacing down. Uh, this one I did well about. I was proud of myself, but I mean, especially the first year that I did it with the Hyro guys, I didn't know what to expect. The Hyro guys were not afraid of partying for sure. So I was kind of just getting the feel of what it was going to be like. And I thought, all right, first day on here, we can have some fun, but there's a lot of week to go. I need to pace myself. And of course I didn't do that at all. And was watching shows and hanging out with people and up way too late. And I woke up the next morning just like, oh my God, I went too hard the first night. And then you have to spend a couple of days recovering, which, you know, is very fun, but it can kind of take a little bit away from the experience of the first day. You have a ton of fun, and you have to spend the next two feeling good enough to have fun again. So it's taken me a few times, but I've grown up a little bit. I'm learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, to an extent, I understand that because when I first started going to college, I was like, oh, let's get hammered, let's get shit faced. But then
Hmm.
years kind of went by, and I'm like, I'm almost 26 now. I've been out of college for a
Hmm.
little over a year. And I'm like, okay, when I go out, I'm going to have one or two, maybe three. I don't want to be out until 2 o'clock in the morning. I just want to go for a few hours, hang out, have some drinks, and then go home and go to sleep. Now, there are very rare occasions like, last night where my cousin will come into town and we'll go out, and then you won't get to bed until 1 o'clock in the morning,
It
which is,
happens.
which is what happened.
You can have you can have a great plan, but you know, sometimes plans only go so far. There's been plenty of nights like last year I did a different cruise ship called the Rock Boat with the Struts, and that is the same kind of situation, but the band that hosts that is Sister Hazel, and the bands was like Sister Hazel, the Struts, Young the Giant. So it was a little bit more like rock and roll focused than like Shiprock, just kind of hard rock metal, even though the Struts are on there as well. But I went in with a plan, and then almost every night I wound up at the silent disco, screaming my head off to like Mr. Brightside and Sugar We're Going Down and everything else with everyone else. And so those are memories that I wouldn't trade either. So
Yeah.
they're all good.
Yeah. Ian, it's like you and me the first episode back for this season. We were having a couple drinks and then we had filmed the episode.
We were.
Yeah,
We were.
that
I
was
was and still am kind of going through a really hard, very it isn't as agonizing as it was in the beginning initially, but now it's kind of subsiding. I'm going through a bit of a breakup right now where I thought this woman was going to be my wife. I was going to look for an engagement ring, but then, shit happened, and now I'm like starting to accept it a little bit more. It's been a full month, so I'm like, okay.
Well, buddy, for the record, I'm sorry to hear about your breakup. I've experienced very similar situations, especially when I was younger. Being involved with somebody that your mind starts kind of planning in a longer sort of context than what ends up happening. And I mean, I've yeah, when I was younger, I got pretty rattled to my core about a situation like that that took me quite some time of just soul searching and like figuring out how to sift through that. And yeah, that's tough. So I feel for you, my friend. It's still pretty fresh, so hopefully you're giving yourself some grace and space to feel out whatever you need to feel, buddy.
I honestly, Evan, since we're kind of on this topic, what is a piece of advice that you can give to our viewers to where two people date, right? And they love each other and they care about each other a lot, but it just doesn't end up working out. What do you kind of recommend in terms of taking steps to recover from that?
That's a great question. I think that there's few things that the masses of people can relate about more than, you know, love and heartbreak. And unfortunately, lots of times these situations happen because I started thinking about this a few years ago. And when you think about it from a numbers perspective, there's, what is it, 7.5 billion people on the planet. And the fact that any two people ever cross paths with each other and are compatible enough, interested in each other enough, happen to hang out and start the beginnings of anything and figure out that they can get along well enough, long enough to make a sustainable relationship. Really, it's miraculous that any relationships ever work out because there's just so many variations of people and personality types and whatnot. And I don't know, maybe in talking this out, I'll think of something, but I don't know if there is a piece of advice necessarily that I would think of in regards to taking steps to mend from that. But I do think it's a really important perspective shift that I got a handful of years ago when I was in a bit of a similar situation where I was, hanging out for a while with somebody who was a wonderful person. We were super compatible, had fun and whatnot. But the more time went by and the more that we learned about each other, the more it was just super obvious that my needs and wants were not always, didn't always line up with somebody with her needs and wants. And it can feel in the midst of that is something that's someone's fault or there's something wrong about that. But there's really no fault or anything wrong about that at all. And sometimes you can hit a point where you have to just objectively look at a situation and go, look, two people can care about each other a lot, but just be like it just doesn't add up, you know? And you also don't, it's not fair for any one person in that situation to concede too much of what their wants and needs are individually for the sake of, fitting somebody else's needs and wants. Obviously, in relationships, there's some of that has to go on, a meeting in the middle, but it's really not fair for somebody to feel obligated or feel pressured into changing major foundational parts about themselves to fit somebody else because then that's just not a recipe for success for either person. So I would I would say perspective wise, like giving some grace and um I don't know, giving some grace to yourself for realizing that it's not always about people not caring about each other. People can care about each other and have tons of love for each other, and the pieces just don't add up. And that some in the midst of it might not feel super fine, but ultimately that is fine because each person still gets to honor their own individuality, still show appreciation to each other, but hopefully just be able to kind of amicably at some point say this isn't gonna ultimately be right for both of us, and that's all right as well. hopefully there's an answer in there.
Yeah, no,
Wonderful.
because that was fucking beautiful, man. That was wonderful.
No,
Like that's everything that I've been kind of experiencing. And actually, I'm not alone. We have a fan, Ryan Walter. Shout out to Ryan Walter. If you ever watch this, this one's for you.
shout out
She's kind
Ryan.
of going through a similar situation where two people care about each other, but right now it's just not right. I also have some friends who are going through it. My cousin is going through it. I mean, dude, it's good to know that in the midst of all this anguish and sorrow that we're not alone in it.
Hmm.
Like there are a lot of people who are going through the same shit. So
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
I'm I'm stoked that you said that, talking about it makes you feel better. Um, and I encourage you to keep doing that for a couple of reasons, but not least of which because just like you said, so many people at any given time are experiencing, a heartbreak or a situation that's tough relationship wise and can really relate, which is, exactly why a lot of the kind of music and the genres that we all enjoy sometimes it's not for any other reason than just hearing someone say something in a song that has existed in your head, but you've never talked about or never heard anybody else say, and hearing it in a song, it's when it reaches out and feels like those moments when you think, oh my God, this person wrote this song for me right now. Like this song is talking directly to me. Finally, there's almost some solace in when you're feeling bad to know that somebody else is feeling bad in the same way, which sounds kind of funny to say it like that, but to be able to relate in a amongst negative emotion sometimes in itself alleviates a little bit of it because at least if you're feeling the negative emotion, you're not isolated in it. So that was something I always enjoyed about music in this genre was that sometimes it would just reach right out at me and I would think, oh my God, finally, like finally this thought that's been floating around in my head exists somewhere else and it's not just something that I struggle with alone.
I dude, I agree with everything that you just said. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Like, and that's why this music, this genre just rocks, dude. No pun
Hmm.
intended, but it just
Yeah.
it's just on an emotional level, it is so much more relevant to those who struggle with anxiety,
Hmm.
depression, heartbreak, right? I feel like at the end of the day, like rock and roll, specifically like punk rock and metal, I would argue more so than any other genre of music, really dive into someone that is struggling inside, like mentally.
Hmm.
Yeah.
and and we're lucky in the fact that the communities for the most part that are based out of these genres are very supportive and welcoming because everybody can relate with the same feelings and feel the same way, and we all know this has sucked for me to feel like this. I certainly don't want somebody else to feel like that or make them feel like that, and if I know someone who's going through it as well, I want to help them the same way that I would want to be helped within this. So it's a very mutual exchange of support. And yeah, I love the rock community for that as well. I mean, I love seeing it concerts too. There's a certain social code or set of social codes that are really strongly enforced by the rock and roll communities regarding safety and inclusivity at shows. And I mean, I'm I really like when I see videos of bands. I think it was Art Architects that I had seen a video of where the singer had stopped a song mid-song and called somebody out in the crowd because there was a young woman crowd surfing or something, and he saw people reaching up and trying to grab her inappropriately or this or that, and just they shut that shit down. I mean, people stop songs when it looks like there's fights going on or if there's people who are unsafe. It's a very, very much an ally community for the most part. and I'm happy and proud to move in circles that are upholding in those sorts of social values like they are. This is a very funny example and story as well. A couple years ago, it might come as a surprise to some folks, but one of my all-time favorite artists and songwriters, singer-songwriters, is Ed Sheeran. All right, sue me to the listeners who aren't aligned with that. That's fair. Um, I saw Ed do a show at the Kansas City Chiefs stadium 2 years ago or something like that. Yeah, at Arrowhead Stadium.
No,
Um,
don't
and he
support the Chiefs.
Kansas
and
City, baby. Woo, 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 woo.
in the midst of his show, he stopped the song and was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Is there a fight going on out here?" And he was like, guys, we're not going to be fighting. You're fighting at my show, like of all places to fight at an Ed Sheeran show." It's like, yeah, let's cut that out. We don't need to do that. And then it starts back into like, perfect or some of like the least aggressive song someone could possibly be rumbling to, but it happens.
It's cool that you talked about Kansas City because right now we're all praying that
Wait,
we make history.
it's now known as the Kansas City Refs, not the Chiefs, by the way. Just saying.
This is true. There were
Really?
some plays where I was like, okay, well, what the hell? Why?
Some
Oh, okay, okay, I
plays.
see.
How about
I
all
see.
the games? Oh my God.
Now, I'll make myself clear in this, I guess. I am not really a sports enthusiast, at least to the extent of like never really followed too many teams, especially football. Baseball is kind of more of my thing still, if anything. Baltimore Orioles is my jam. Um, but because I'm from Nebraska, the closest the closest place that had major sports teams was Kansas City with the Royals and with the Chiefs. So, to whatever degree that I am affiliated with professional sports, some part of it is with Kansas City. But this happened before the Chiefs boom of the last few years happened. So
Okay, I will give you that. I'm not mad
I'm
at
in,
you anymore.
I'm indoctrinated just by proximity,
See,
Victoria. That's it.
no, I hear you because I'm from Saskatchewan, so we don't
Hmm.
have any. I guess we got a Canadian football team, but we don't have an NHL team. We don't have an NFL team. We don't like have all
Hmm.
these teams. So when I was younger, I had a clean palette to pick
Yeah,
whatever
sure.
team I wanted, and most people for hockey went to Edmonton Oilers.
Hmm.
I cannot stand the Oilers, so proud Seattle Kraken fan right here.
Okay, there we go.
Football, Cincinnati Bengals, because of Andy Biersack, obviously.
Yep, of
But
course, fair enough.
and Miami Dolphins. I
Perfect.
do like the Dolphins. Um, yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of
What's the connection there? Just that it was your pick?
I like their colors.
Yeah, nice. Good a reason as any.
I felt the same way about the Baltimore Ravens. For some reason, when I was a kid, I never really followed the Rams, nor did I necessarily follow the Kansas City Chiefs. But the
Hmm.
Rams didn't get bent. They moved to Los Angeles, so they're
Yes, they
dead
did.
as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know. The Baltimore Ravens are just they have a really awesome uniform color. Like I love purple, I love black, I love Edgar Allan Poe.
Yep,
You know,
you and me
the
both.
Ravens. I don't know. I just
Yep, yep. It all added up. Where
yeah.
are you from again?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh yeah. Okay, nice.
And I hope that Kansas City remains on this side of the border and they don't congregate over to the Kansas side of
I
Kansas
heard
City.
about this as well. I have a bunch of family in like Kansas City, Missouri as well, and sort of in the surrounding areas. So yeah, I'm with you. I've spent a bunch of time out there, and that's another reason why, Kansas City sports are somewhat close to me as well, if I have any closeness to a team. Like my one of my cousins played basketball at the University of Missouri for a while, and so there's a few ties that I have sports wise. I'm not from Baltimore, of course, either. So I got Orioles tattoos and stuff, and when people see me out and about or do recognize that it's an Orioles tattoo, I go through this whole thing of them being like, "Oh, you're an Orioles fan, you from Baltimore?" And I say, "No, actually, Nebraska." And they go, "Okay." And I'm like, "Yeah, but my dad is like a lifelong Orioles fan." They're like, "Oh, so he's from Maryland." I said, "No, he's from Pennsylvania, actually." So they just accidentally fall into basically the worst story ever of why I'm a fan of the Orioles. But ultimately, it is a sweet story because while I'm not really sports affiliated now, it's become a really strong tie with my dad, and we'll go to the Royals games with the Orioles when they're in Kansas City, or we'll go to trips to Baltimore to go to games there. So I'm still you know, I tell people that I appropriate the Orioles because I wear stuff all the time. I have the tattoos. I go to some games, but if you were to ask me too many questions about their current roster, I get a little squirrely. Well, in an amazing twist of events a couple of years ago, so my introduction with the Struts was a friend of mine had gotten hit up to go tech one show with them, which he couldn't do. So he asked me, and I went and did my first show with them, which was a couple years ago, and it was just a one-off show. So we do the show, everything goes well. I go back home, and a few weeks later, I get hit up again by them to do another couple of shows together. It was like two or three. Well, serendipitously, one of those shows ended up being an on-field performance at the Camden Yards baseball stadium in Baltimore after one of the Orioles games. So we go to the stadium and all day we're like underground setting up and getting ready for the deal. They give the guys all Orioles jerseys and merch and anything that you can think of. We have these amazing box seats for the game. The Orioles got it was not good. It was a bloodbath as far as the Orioles were concerned. But the experience was cool. And then after the game got done, they wheeled the band and us out on all their on these big like flatbed rigs that they can bring out on the field while everyone was still in the stadiums. And the Struts did a 30-minute performance or something like that. So I thought, wow, the universe threw me a funny one on this, but this is pretty cool. So my one baseball stadium affiliated performance was at the Baltimore Stadium. So I'm happy about that.
While we're on the topic of the
Yeah.
Struts, may I just say how good of a band they are live?
Yes.
I
What
always
did you, what
enjoyed
did you think?
I always enjoyed listening to them. I never listened much to them, but like I'd hear the odd song on the radio or something. But
Hmm.
yeah, really good show. They could have played the entire night. I could have went without Queens of the Stone Age, but
Yep. Fair
so good.
enough. Um, Now here's a question. I'm curious about your perspective about this. Now, having said that, having listened to their music a bit prior, the recorded music, obviously, were you surprised at the difference between the live songs being performed versus how it sounds on the records?
Not like I thought it was better live, but
Hmm.
not being that the records were bad. It's
Yeah,
it's
right.
the energy that they
Hmm.
have on stage and just their Luke, is that the singer?
Yep, Luke.
Yeah, he's just running everywhere. And
Yeah,
it like I love that when I go to shows. Like
yep.
that perfect.
They are incredible about charisma and energy. And I asked that about the live versus recorded music because I had listened to the Struts a bit before working with them, and then as I started working with them and it picked up quite a bit, the vast majority of the time that I was hearing their songs was in the live context. And when I would hear their songs, if it came up on shuffle or if I'd put it on just at some point on my music, I would think, "Oh my gosh, like this is actually so different on the records. They're more like a kind of a pop band with but it's a band like instrumentation and it's still songs and is whatever. But when you see it live, you realize, oh no, this is a rock band playing pop songs, not a pop band playing rock songs. I mean, they are as rock and rolling of a band as is around these days. I can't give those guys enough props. And Luke's a freak of nature. He's I don't know why I've lucked out so much in my career so far getting to work around vocally just some of the most incredible, like vocalists that are in the game right now as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Luke Luke's a menace. And there were so many nights where I would watch them, we'd play sometimes in little venues where like when we were touring Europe, we played at this venue in France where it's the middle of the summer. The air conditioning wasn't working. In the afternoon, we walked in and it was already, 90 degrees in there. So by the time that everyone gets packed in, you know how it goes at shows, the temperature goes up, 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 and people are all packed in and sweating. And there was nights where I would watch Luke just drenched in sweat and towels over his head and thinking, there's no way that he doesn't cut a song or that he doesn't, skip part of it and do, one of the deals where they put the microphone out so they can catch a breath. I never saw Luke skip a note, skip a line, cut a song because he was too tired. If anything, they'd finish the set and he'd come out and do an encore song afterwards. And you just think like, what is this guy made of? you know? And that's just how he is. Very, very legit band. All those guys are so good at what they do.
Yeah. Well, one thing I noticed too when they came on, normally in arena shows like that, when you have an opening band, not everyone's seated yet. They're just getting
Hmm.
warmed up. And for the struts, like they started and people were actually like coming down to their seats to like check it out. And the participation of the audience, like I feel like as an opening band, it's always kind of hard to get the audience more interacted with your performance, and they had no issue. So
Yeah, Luke kind of doesn't give you an option not
no.
to.
Yeah.
Which I've always loved bands like that. Here's a funny story for you about the Struts though in regards to this. The last show that I did with them before kind of officially transitioning to starting to work with Hailstorm last summer. The last show that I did with them was a festival in Italy where the Struts ended up being direct support to Tool, who was headlining the day of the festival. Okay. And so the whole festival itself, some of the bands seemed a little bit mismatched. Like, oh, wow, there's some really heavy bands and there's some really not so heavy bands. And it seemed like not a straightforward lineup that you would expect. So a few bands play throughout the day and then the Struts go on and they look. Luke's in like pink pants and everyone's so unbelievably British and they go out and they're playing these pop rock songs and Luke's dancing and snapping and shaking his hips around and like a song or two in one of the techs that was like festivals were hire techs to be around all day and they'll be like the stage managers or whatever. And this guy I'd been working with all day came over to me and he said something like, "Oh man, the crowd seems like they're a little, hard to reach, I guess today." And I remember saying, "Oh no, I know it looks like that, but you just wait. I watch these guys every night. Luke's gonna have them eating out of the palm of their hand by the end of this set." And by the time we got to the end of the set, I thought, "Oof, this there is virtually zero crossover I learned between Struts fans and Tool fans." And so the people who were there to see Tool were pretty much like this for the whole Strut set. And yeah, it wasn't because the Struts didn't put on their typical fantastic performance. It was just the wrong crowd. They were they were ready for a different brand of music than what the Struts brought. Sometimes it goes down like that, and that's fine. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean here's a little bit of a callback earlier. It doesn't mean anyone's doing anything wrong. It just doesn't add up. And it turns out that a bunch of Italian Tool fans does not add up to wanting to hear the Struts music, at least not at that particular day.
Yep.
And that's fine. But I did think that it was an incredibly cool move that Queens of the Stone Age brought the Struts out, because that's not a pairing that I think is super obvious. I mean,
Mhm.
they're musically they're not really in a similar ballpark, but I really like when bigger, heavier bands do things like that and bring bands out that don't exactly seem like a perfect fit. Um, but I mean, hopefully that you thought that show was great. I thought once the show was happening, the pairing made so much sense. It wasn't so much about the genre; it was about that Queens of the Stone Age recognized that um, the Struts are a fantastic live band, and so are Queens of the Stone Age. I mean, I went into that tour having not ever listened to too much Queens of the Stone Age music, which I know is another thing that a lot of rock and roll fans would want to vilify me for, but no reason other than I just hadn't. But by the time I saw a couple of their performances, I was left unable to feel any other way about it. I was like, this band is unbelievably good. And so the pairing was cool, but I really like when bigger bands sort of give other bands a platform like that to do their thing, even if it's not exactly what they do themselves.
All right, Evan, one more question here.
Okay.
What other projects do you have on the go right now? You just got back from Shiprocked. What do you have lined up?
I did. So the I don't exactly know what the total of this year is going to turn out to be. This might end up being a slightly longer answer than what the easy version could have been, but sometimes I'm not I can be a little long-winded. But what I do know that I'm going to be doing is going out with Hailstorm for most of the middle through the end of the year. They have some stuff that's coming up that I'm super excited to be a part of. I'll be teching for Lizzie again, which I cannot scream her praises higher from the rooftops. She is just as good, just as sweet, just as inspiring, and just as wonderful to everybody who's around her as she could possibly be. I mean, there's a reason why Lizzie's name gets talked about in the way that it does, and I'm so happy to relay that every word of it that you ever hear is true. So working with them will go on later in the year. As far as the first part of the year, uh, next month I'm going to South America, teching with the Treyu for a couple weeks, which will be awesome. Another sort of reunion kind of situation with them, which I'm very much looking forward to. And to tell you the truth, here's a strange thing that's coming up. At some point this month is going to be the 2 year anniversary of the last live show that I played, which was with Lilith in Europe 2 years ago at the end of basically the album cycle of Creative and Filtered Dust, as it turned out. And I've been feeling some type of way about this for a while now because, of course, I'm a musician and a guitar player, bass player, first and foremost. And teching was something that I sort of inadvertently fell into. And I also really enjoy teching, mainly because I get the chance to do it with people who I appreciate and respect so much, and I've become, very, very close with. And last year around this time, I made a pretty dedicated decision that while I'm doing teching stuff, I wanted to put some more effort into it because for a while there, when I was bouncing between playing and teching, I was, in all honesty, had the mindset a little bit of, well, I'm just a guitar player who happens to be teching right now. And so I was sort of half-assing it. Like I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Um, but that stopped being okay with me because I work with these bands that I respect and who trust me to come do a good job at what I'm doing, and they pay me to do the job and everything, and I get to do cool shows and big professional contexts. So for me to just be sort of tiptoeing around this didn't sit well with me. So I decided I was going to lean into teching more while I'm doing it. And I've accomplished that. And I'm still very much of that mindset. What I have realized is that in the midst of that, though, I haven't as much maintained as much effort in seeking out performance related gigs. And that is something that I'm pretty adamant now about trying to, I don't know, put effort towards again, and really trying to balance out these things that I do. So, my hope and what I'm shooting for, especially for these first few months in the year when I have some more downtime, is seeking some of those things out. I would love to get back to playing some shows, whether guitar, bass, yeah, I want to be playing again. So that's what I have going on, and that's what I hope to have going on.
I hear you. I don't play a show for like a week and then I'm like, I need to play another show.
I know it feels strange, doesn't it? Well, I mean, yeah, look at you. You're playing shows all the time.
Trying to.
Yeah.
Free
No,
hot dogs.
free hot dogs. Just in time, Ian, for marine biology trivia.
Let's fucking go.
I
I'm
wonder how
so
I'm gonna do with this. I've never specifically delved into things of this nature, but I'm so interested in weird animal stuff in the ocean, whatever. So I wonder if my fragmented interest of this is going to combine into a superpower. We'll see.
We'll see.
so it's multiple choice and true and false, so you have a better chance than you think.
All right. I feel
Um,
confident coming into this.
all right, well, since we kind of went with this theme initially from the get-go, I feel obligated to talk about the Bermuda Triangle. So here we go.
Bring it on. I'm curious if any of these questions are going to be surrounding a particular topic of the Bermuda Triangle that I've heard about recently. So, well, if it's not, I'll mention it before we wrap up.
All right. The mysterious Bermuda Triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle, is said to have swallowed many ships, planes, and helicopters into its depths. In which ocean is this regional anomaly located? A. The Atlantic. B. The Pacific. C. The Indian. D. Arctic.
The Atlantic.
You are correct.
Yep, Atlantic. I was afraid that there was going to be some other answer in there that I was going to totally biff, and people were going to be like, "Really? You were, you know, shouting about how you were just in the Bermuda Triangle on this cruise ship, and you don't even know where you were." Atlantic.
Okay, that's 1 point. All right. Next question. What is the largest sea turtle in the world? Is it A, a loggerhead, B, Kemp's Ridley, C, leatherback, or D, hawksbill?
Oof. Um, I'm gonna go with C leatherback.
That is correct.
Yeah,
They
okay.
can
All right.
weigh up to 2,000 pounds.
All right. Yep.
Sick.
Nice. I was
All right.
nervous there for a second.
True or false? Octopuses have tentacles.
Oh, geez, the way that you did the eyebrows when you said that makes me think that there's some trickery around this. Um, my my easy answer would be to say yes, but what I bet the answer is something like false. Technically, they're arms or something like that. So I'll say false. Technically, they're arms or fingers or something like that.
Damn, you are on the money
That
today,
was
man.
spot on.
You were like right on the money. So the answer is false. They actually have arms, not tentacles. While animals like squid and cuttlefish have arms and tentacles, octopuses are more simple. They have 8 arms with trademark suckers. You can see tentacles on other cephalopods. They have suckers only by the end.
Oh, okay. Nice. I learned something.
He's killing it, dude. He's
This is,
killing
He
it.
is.
I feel good about that guess.
Literally, the study of whales. Cetology is the title of the 32nd chapter of what lengthy American novel? Is it A, The Old Man and the Sea, B, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, or C, Moby Dick?
Ceology is the study of whales. Is that
Whales.
what you said?
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with my gut again on this one and say C.
how?
Okay, okay, nice. Thank
Amazing.
you. Thank you.
Wait a minute.
Make a battle.
I thought it might be A as well, but I was hoping it was Moby Dick.
I'm very impressed. That is
That was
fantastic.
fun. I like that you guys throw these bonus rounds on the end. What was the last one? Oh, no, I watched your interview a couple months ago with Justice,
Oh,
and
by the way, Justice wants to make a claim that he indeed does have a bum because you and Lindsay have both told the same story about him not having a bum. So the first thing that guy says to us when he came on the Zoom call was, "I would just like to make my statement that I do have a bum and it is beautiful," is what he
yeah, well, let's see it, Justice. Prove it.
said.
But yeah, when
Nice.
on those you I think you asked me this too about if what is it? If you had to stay in a haunted house, who would you want it to be haunted by
Yes. Have we
or
ever
something
asked you
along
that
those
question?
lines? I think so, but I don't remember who my choice would have been if that was the case.
Since our last interview with you, who do you want to haunt you until dawn in a haunted house? But it has to be a dead celebrity, right? Or a historical figure of some kind, right?
Um, I felt when I was watching the Justice interview and he was talking through this question, I thought of somebody that I was like, oh, this would be my answer. This is the most perfect answer. I'm never gonna forget this. And of course, now on the spot, I don't know what that would have been. I would be willing to bet that if I answered this question before, I would have said something like Tupac or Dimebag Darrell
That's
or,
exactly who
That's
you
what it
said. Yeah,
was.
you said
okay.
Tupac.
He said Tupac. That's what it was.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still into that. I'm going to throw a twist into here because this past year I got into like Greek mythology and things of that nature. So it would be pretty awesome if like, you know, one of those old writers like Homer or something like that was haunting around. I mean, what a poetic thing to be haunted by. He could be trying to scare me all the time and I probably wouldn't even understand what he was talking about. So I'd be like, I don't know, man, but this sounds gorgeous, whatever it is you're saying. Well, I must say because I brought this up earlier and it didn't actually come up in the marine topics, but something that got put on my radar recently regarding the Bermuda Triangle that I thought was so silly when I first heard it was that a friend of mine had mentioned if I had ever heard of all the weird stuff about eels. Does this ring any bells to either of you? Doesn't look like it. Okay, it didn't to me either. And I was like, eels like the animal? And they were like, yeah, there's all this weird stuff about eels where all of them come from the Bermuda Triangle. And I was like, that that doesn't even make any sense. And she's like, I know, just look it up yourself. I just read about it. So I'm thinking this doesn't make any sense. This is some goofy like internet thing. No, as it turns out, all American and European eels supposedly come from the Bermuda Triangle and migrate to all these different areas, but there has never been what is it? There has never been baby eels found outside of the Bermuda Triangle, and there's never been adult eels found inside the Bermuda Triangle. And despite tracking and despite trying to figure out what the deal with them is, eels are just some weird slippery little devils. So if you're interested at all, dive into that rabbit hole because I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's actually turns out it's true. So
Dude, that's creepy. That is so
That is
creepy, dude.
makes
Ugh.
no sense, but turns out
interesting.
maybe that's where Avril Lavigne's hanging out as well.
I
The
was just
real
about,
one.
I was thinking something in my head, like I need to relate this back to that topic. Well, thank you for joining us today, Evan. As always, this was a lot of fun.
Thank you both so much for having me yet again. Um, mad proud of you guys for continuing to do such a great job with the show, and I love seeing all your different guests that come on. And I feel like every couple of episodes you have somebody on where I go, "Hey, I know that person," or that's awesome that they got that they did this podcast with you. So I'm honored to be back for a third time, and yeah, hopefully again soon we can do another one of these. Keep hitting me with these trivia rounds. I'm ready for the curveballs.